Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tamara, and I truly cannot believe we're doing another book review right now. I can't. Today's December 31st. It's the 31st. We're on the doorstep of 2026. And I managed to finish the next book in the Plated Prisoner series on a turbo drive because I was obsessed. I'm still obsessed, but man, you should have seen me freaking going through it. I was like my eyes, I kid you not, were probably like double the size in reading this because so much happened, so much I didn't expect to happen. And like, it just took all of my suspicions from reading the last book, like the second one. It confirmed what I was thinking, but it just took it to a whole other level. And I just didn't expect it to go so hard in this book. I didn't expect it. It was amazing, amazing. So we're gonna talk about it because I could not let it sit without making a video. As crazy as it sounds, I have so much to freaking say. For those of you who don't know, this is a spoiler talk review. So if you haven't read the book and don't care to be spoiled, then step aside, come back once you've read it. If you really just don't care, then let's just talk about it. I gave this book a 5 out of 5. This is a 5 out of 5 book for me. It, again, like I mentioned, encompassed so much and more than I ever expected one book to do. Like, I'm genuinely questioning what's going to happen in the books to come now because I felt like we closed off a lot in this book where I'm wondering and curious if the next books are going to keep growing in terms of like epicness, or are they just kind of now slowing down because so much happened in this. And we're going to talk about some very key parts in this. But okay, let me just go in and say that at the end of the second book, Glint, I had questioned because Midas had said a line in that saying, Aurene, we're going to make so much together. Like, we still have so much to make. And I was questioning why Midas was saying that because it made it seem like he was reliant on her to make things gold. Instead of him having the power, he needed her to do it. And that, I tell you, was that whole idea of mine was talked about right away in this book, actually. And it confirmed my seeking suspicions. But I didn't know Midas has no power at all. So he always was manipulating her and was always using her to put this deception on, as if he is the true king of gold. She's made absolutely everything from the very beginning to help with this farce that is this, powerless king who has no actual magic potential. And that was a little bit of a shock to me. I didn't realize he was going to be that much of a fraud, but okay. I think I'm going to have to talk about Midas in general first before we even go into some of our other characters. Oh my God. I was floored by Midas in this book. Floored. It went through a whole trajectory of showing us what happened to Aurene when she got taken from her home as a child, when she ended up on the streets, when she lost her virtue, pretty much up until you meet Midas in her past life. And it was already, it was very interesting. And we'll talk about Aurene's character a lot too, but Midas, it also alluded to his story where like he came from a drunk father, he came from a one night stand kind of mother, he came from nothing. And we knew he came from nothing, but I didn't realize he came from that much of nothing. He has absolutely no royal blood in him whatsoever. And he pretty much, from scraping the streets like Aurene had to out of force, became a businessman. Like, he became a businessman. He acquired properties. He was selling saddles. He pretty much had different like venues and land that he had acquired through his business incentives. He was a thief. He had pretty much a group, what almost seems like not mercenaries, but a little bit of a gang kind of mentality. And he was like this renowned name on the streets for being dangerous. And we had come across this name in Aurene's backstory, but not realizing that that was Midas. So he's been around for quite some time, even before she and him had met. But it also ties in that he strategically had known of her, wanted her, acquired her, manipulated exactly what she needed when he found her. And he was using her from the very beginning. And he sought her out and then became this whole persona of Midas. And so we discover this revelation at the end as to how much he's been along for the ride from the beginning in Aurene's story, and how early and how he was never genuine. And I think that's the part that completely threw me. Not only is he powerless, but he's this mastermind, power-hungry strategist, and it's worked out to him this entire time. Like, he's not only before he became the king and put on this whole gold persona, he was already wealthy with all of these different properties and stuff. So I think I have to give him credit for that in general, because I can't believe that he's that much of a strategist to have such a long-term plan and execute it as well as he has. But he's a complete monster, like a complete monster. And I think that's the part that threw me so much, is that he genuinely never cared for her. Never. He was using her from the beginning. He sought her out as a next piece in his freaking chess game and executed it splendidly for her to be so devoted to him as she was in the earlier books. And I just couldn't believe it. So that character did a full 180 on me, and I absolutely couldn't believe it. Anyways, Aureen's story in this was incredibly enlightening. Like I said, you got to know her backstory and stuff too, but she pretty much really came into making her own decisions, demanding respect, not falling into the cage mentality, making sure she doesn't, like making sure people talk to her as if she's a human and not just relying on being told what to do. Like, she made the calls, she made the rules. And I loved seeing her grow into that. And in addition, she was learning how to harness her ribbons and her powers and like really developing some sense of strength as to her not feeling as much as powerless as people always said that she was. And she was not going to be put under anyone's thumb. And I loved the trajectory of her character's development in general. The ending for this book was mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. And we will get into that as we're easing into that part of my thoughts, because I was just like, I feel like I was beyond floored, but in a good way, Oh my gosh. Slade in this, like, this man is honestly so filthy with how he speaks. He's such an icon in his persona, his ways of deception, with having like his brother impersonate him as the commander while he plays as King Rot. So we learn a lot more about how Slade is navigating this sense of manipulation and how much of his persona as King Rot isn't necessarily true. Like, he isn't as ruthless and as, you know, I don't know, I feel like merciless, if that's even a word, as people assume he is. And that's really interesting. And I feel like they're going to touch on this more in the next book as to his background. And I'm really interested in hearing more about that. But he was pretty much waiting for Aureen to choose him instead of Midas throughout the sequence of this book. And when they had these little moments sporadically timed throughout this book, I was obsessed. And then when they finally had their first intimate moment after she chose to be with him, I swear I was kicking and squealing. It was worded, it was paced, it was perfectly timed. And I think I have to give credit to this book so much about the timing, because as much as so much happened in this book, and she's a big book, like she is big book, but it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like it dragged out. I felt like it was really well done. And you got to see all of these different political stances. Like, you got to see Slade and his kingdom, what he's prioritizing a little bit, but I feel like we're going to learn more about him later. We got to see King Midas moving all his pieces. We got introduced to another ruler from the third kingdom, which is this woman, which Midas ends up trying to end up marrying. We end up talking about his former wife from the Sixth Kingdom and all of her pieces as to how she's trying to take over and rule. That character, in a sense, I feel bad for her, because I understand her motive and the passion to wanting to pretty much claim what was rightfully hers from birth. However, her means of execution really fell short, and I do feel bad in a sense for her, but I don't, because she wasn't very nice to people, and I just feel like that's really disappointing, because I thought that character may end up being something that's redeemable. Maybe she is, because she's still alive. Maybe down the line that her and Aureen run into each other and become unexpected allies. I don't know. But I feel like so far that character has been underwhelming to me, but I do understand the motive for her, and I do like that she tries, I guess. She tried to outwit Midas, but again, master manipulator, thinking many steps ahead, and got the best of her again. But as I'm saying, politics, that was such a forefront thing. Like, the heir to the Fifth Kingdom, after Midas had killed his father, was like a 12-year-old boy, and Midas was trying to manipulate and cater to this kid to gain all these different alliances amongst these kingdoms to put him in the best power play. And so the politics throughout this book were incredibly fascinating. It added to the world building for me, which I really enjoyed. And in addition, our characters that we're meant to love are paced in a way that you get so much of them in such like a controversial world. And I loved it. I loved the expansion we got to meeting some of our familiar faces a little bit more from the prior books, like Gigby, I think his name was. He was Oreen's original commander before, or not commander, but head guard before she was taken by the pirates in the end of the first book. And he was brought back into this. I didn't realize he was alive. Midas was keeping him against his will, pretty much forcing Oreen to do everything in the castle to uphold this whole facade before some big ball, which is where Midas intended to do a big power play. And he was pretty much saying, if you participate, then we won't hurt Digby and we'll bring you to him. At the very end, she ends up finally seeing this man and he's like torn to smithereens. And it's heartbreaking because you don't get a lot of Digby really in the first book with his personality, but in this book you get a lot of heartfelt moments with him. And I think I was just so surprised. I just didn't expect to love that character as much as I did, because you didn't get a lot of him in the first book. He was just undyingly loyal to the rules and to Midas. So I didn't realize how much he cared for her. And she was so adamant about freeing him and getting him to a good place that when they finally saw each other, they had a lot of sweet, intimate moments in private where she pretty much said that you're the father that I never had. And it was incredibly sweet. Like, he's obviously in a lot of pain, but he was so defensive of her, and he pretty much said that I've always been your guard. I've never been Midas's guard. I've been your guard. And it was incredibly sweet. And I'm so glad they brought that character back and gave us more time with him, because I feel like he's going to be a good addition to the books to follow now. And I'm really excited to see how that relationship grows, especially because she doesn't have a father figure. So I want to see that sentiment as he gets better and whatnot. Okay, now we have to talk about the unravelness of the end, I feel like. One, when Midas cuts off her ribbons in that scene where she gets reunited with Digby, I feel like I almost puked. Like, I feel like that was written in a way that was so impactful that I can't even imagine her pain knowing that the ribbons are such a part of her. And throughout this book, the ribbons were comical. Like, they had personalities. Like, when she was in Slade's room, the ribbons were like rolling up in his bed sheets and like taking in the essence of him because they're the biggest fans of him. And it's hilarious because she's trying to teach them to behave half the time because they have so much personality. So I feel like throughout this actual book, they gave the ribbons so much more emphasis because they're alive. And so when the ribbons got cut, I feel like we felt it. I felt it because I was like, oh, this really sucks. It's like he's cutting off a piece of her arm is what it felt like, because it's real flesh and bone. And it's, a ribbon. But you get what I'm trying to say. It was a lot harder to read than I thought. And I was super sad about it. It was super sad. And her pain, I could only imagine it. So I was like, Midas is cruel. He's a psycho. I was over it. Then the following thing, when they consistently tried to now drug her to comply for this big ball and this big, presentation of Midas's strength. And because she is, I don't know, like, she's obviously not in her right mind. She's weakened, but at the same time, she like managed to pull through this drug and kind of snapped out of it, let's just say, in the nick of time. But regardless of this, their whole exchange of understanding where each other's real motives were between her and Midas was a very big power play on both of their characters. And I thought that was like cinematic, like that scene. And I heard that this book series is getting made into a TV show. If they can execute the ending of this book perfection, I'd be so happy. I truly would be so happy. But despite that point, the ending was insane, because she not only stood up to Midas tenfold, but she also saved Slade, because Midas manipulated and pretty much killed the heir to the Fifth Kingdom, that 12-year-old boy, through poison. And they tried to make it out that it was Slade who did it, because Slade's the rotting king. He has a pure persona. And pretty much Midas tried to take down multiple people at one time. And I almost said Elaine. Oreen would not stand for it. So she came and she pretty much was like, no, I'm going with him. You're the one that killed him. Like, she put all the cards out on the table and didn't care about any of the consequences. And again, a power play that I just didn't expect she would have at this stage of the books. Like, I didn't expect it. I knew she was growing, but that was like, I'm here. So this is why I'm questioning what's going to happen in the next couple books, because after that, she also unlocked a huge part of her powers where she can manipulate the gold she's already created. So the entire castle, which is made of gold, ended up melting and forming and coming alive. And she destroyed all of her enemies, including Midas. So Midas died in this. And he's the real enemy, right? Like, he's the main manipulator. So I just, again, curious what's happening in the next books. And it was just one of those power play moves that I didn't expect, but I was so impressed happened. And I was so impressed with Aurene. At the very end, similar to a lot of Fays, I feel like once they hit their like real peak of power, it kills them because it's like almost like an overdose. And I've read a lot of like Fae books where this kind of thing happens. So she kind of gets knocked out at the end. Otherwise she would die because she depletes too much magic. So I don't know. It was a really interesting way of ending. And I thought it was incredibly well done. Like incredibly well done. I couldn't even, like I'm telling you, like everything just kept happening. And I was like, what? Most of the book. Truly most of the book. And in addition, Aurene spends a lot of time, again, trying to have some sense of relationship with the Saddles. And I appreciate her energy in this. And I really hope that this pays off for her down the line. I really do, because I feel like she deserves to be looked at in a way that's not spiteful, because she didn't do anything to those girls. And I'm hoping that this ticking away at some of these characters, they become like undyingly loyal to her down the line, is what I'm truly hoping for. Because other than that, I'm kind of like, what the heck is happening? Besides Risa, who still is on like the hinge of trying to push her away, but I feel like is slowly more so warming up to her than the others. I just hope that that whole relationship blossoms. All of them blossom and the books to follow. So, because Aurene deserves it. She really does. And I'm just really hopeful, because I feel like I love her more and more. But this book, I was like obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, look, I have Glow right here. That's the next book. It's like a freaking Bible. I'm going to start reading it now, because I just have to keep going on this roller coaster. And I really hope that I don't get disappointed, because like the action's so much in this book that I'm really questioning where this is going to go now. I really am. So we will see. We will see. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts, and we'll come back with the next book review probably early 2026, knowing this streak I'm on. So bye for now.